Jake Morrison stood in the massive hall and tried not to look nervous. The ceiling stretched so high above him that he could barely see it. Thousands of aliens from across the galaxy filled the space, their bodies in every color and shape imaginable. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few seemed to be made of pure light. Jake wore his best Earth uniform, but he felt small and plain compared to everyone around him. He was not supposed to be important today. He was just an observer, a representative from Earth sent to watch and learn. Humans were new to the galactic community. They had only invented faster-than-light travel 15 years ago. Most of the other species had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. Earth was like a child trying to sit at the adult table. "Stay calm," whispered Commander Lisa Hayes, standing next to him. She was the head of Earth's small diplomatic team. "We're just here to watch. Don't touch anything. Don't speak unless spoken to, and for heaven's sake, don't embarrass us." Jake nodded. He had heard this speech 3 times already. At 28 years old, he was the youngest member of the Earth delegation. His father had been a mechanic and his mother a teacher. He never imagined he would end up on an alien planet watching a royal ceremony. The hall suddenly went quiet. Every alien stopped talking at once. Jake felt his heart beat faster. Princess Liara entered from the far side of the hall. She walked slowly, her head held high. She was tall and graceful, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly. Her eyes were large and silver, and her long dark hair floated behind her as if underwater. She wore robes of deep purple and gold. 2 attendants walked behind her, carrying the train of her dress. Jake had never seen anyone so beautiful or so distant. She looked like she was made of ice and starlight. "That's the Emperor's daughter," Lisa whispered. "This ceremony will choose her future husband. It's a huge honor to even be invited to watch." The princess walked to the center of the hall. There, on a raised platform, stood a large crystal. It was taller than Jake and seemed to contain swirling lights inside it. The crystal of resonance, they called it. Jake had read about it in the briefing files. According to Valorian belief, the crystal was thousands of years old and had magical properties. Emperor Vorath stood near the platform. He was massive, with the same blue skin as his daughter, but with age lines marking his face. He wore a crown of dark metal that seemed to absorb light. His voice boomed across the hall when he spoke. "Today my daughter will bond with her chosen partner," the Emperor said. "The crystal of resonance will reveal the one whose soul matches hers. This is our oldest tradition. The crystal has never been wrong." Jake watched as Princess Liara climbed the steps to the platform. She placed both hands on the crystal. The lights inside it began to swirl faster. The entire hall held its breath. At first, nothing happened. Then the crystal began to glow. Soft blue light filled it from within. The light grew brighter and brighter until Jake had to squint. Suddenly, a beam of pure white light shot from the crystal. The beam pointed directly at Jake. Jake froze. Every eye in the hall turned to look at him. The beam of light was so bright that it made his uniform glow. He could feel heat on his skin. "No," he heard Lisa whisper beside him. "No, no, no." Princess Liara stared at Jake from across the hall. Her silver eyes were wide with shock. Her hands were still on the crystal and she seemed unable to move. The hall erupted in chaos. Aliens began shouting in dozens of languages. Some pointed at Jake. Others rushed toward the platform. A tall alien with red skin and horns pushed through the crowd. "This is impossible," the red-skinned alien roared. "The crystal must be broken." "A human? A primitive human? High Chancellor Dravos, please." Emperor Vorath raised his hand. His voice was calm, but Jake could hear the strain in it. "The crystal has spoken. The crystal is wrong," Dravos shouted. "Humans have barely left their own planet. They have no honor, no history with our people. This creature cannot bond with our princess." Jake felt his face burn. He wanted to run, but his legs would not move. The light from the crystal still shone on him like a spotlight. Lisa grabbed his arm. "Don't say anything," she hissed. "Let the diplomats handle this," but Jake could not stay quiet. "I don't want this," he said loudly. His voice cracked, but he kept talking. "I'm just here to observe. There must be a mistake. I'll leave right now if that helps." The Emperor looked at him for the first time. His gaze was heavy and measured. "The crystal of resonance does not make mistakes," he said slowly. "For 3,000 years it has chosen partners for the royal line. It has never failed." "Then it just did," someone shouted from the crowd. Princess Liara finally moved. She took her hands off the crystal and the beam of light faded. She walked down the platform steps with perfect posture, her face showing no emotion. When she reached the center of the hall, she turned to face her father. "The law is clear," she said. Her voice was soft but carried across the entire space. "The crystal's choice is absolute. If this human is chosen, then he is my bonded partner." Jake felt his stomach drop. "This could not be happening, Liara," the Emperor said gently. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately." "There is nothing to discuss, Father," she replied. "You taught me that tradition and law are what hold our empire together. The crystal has chosen. I will honor that choice." She turned and looked directly at Jake for the first time. Her silver eyes studied him carefully. Jake saw no warmth in them, only duty and acceptance. "What is your name?" she asked. "Jake," he managed to say. "Jake Morrison." "Jake Morrison," she repeated as if testing how the words felt. "I am Princess Liara of the Valorian Empire. According to our laws, you are now my chosen partner. However, before the bonding can be completed, you must prove yourself worthy through 3 trials." "Trials?" Jake's voice came out higher than he intended. "The trial of wisdom, the trial of strength, and the trial of sacrifice," she explained. "These tests will show whether you can stand beside a future empress. If you fail any trial, the bonding will be annulled and you will return to your planet." Jake looked at Lisa, who looked back at him with pure panic in her eyes. He looked at the crowd of aliens, many of whom were glaring at him with hatred. He looked at the Emperor, who seemed troubled but resigned. Finally, he looked back at Princess Liara. "And if I refuse?" he asked quietly. "Then you insult our people, our traditions, and our empire," she said. "Your planet's relationship with the Valorian Empire would be damaged beyond repair." Jake closed his eyes. He thought about Earth, about his family, about the billions of people depending on good relations with the galaxy. He thought about how one wrong move could ruin everything. When he opened his eyes, he stood straighter. "Then I'll take the trials," he said. The hall exploded with noise again, but Jake barely heard it. He was too busy watching Princess Liara's face, searching for any hint of what she was thinking. But her expression remained as cold and distant as the stars outside. Jake's new room in the royal palace was bigger than his entire apartment back on Earth. The walls were made of smooth white stone that glowed softly, providing light without any visible source. A massive bed sat in one corner, covered in fabrics that felt like water when he touched them. Through the tall windows, he could see 3 moons hanging in the purple sky. He sat on the edge of the bed and put his head in his hands. What had he gotten himself into? A chime sounded at his door. Before Jake could respond, it slid open. A Valorian woman entered, her movements sharp and precise. She was older than Princess Liara, with darker blue skin and eyes that looked like chips of ice. "I am Lady Seraphine," she said without greeting. "I have been assigned to prepare you for the trials. We have much work to do in very little time." "Nice to meet you too," Jake muttered. Lady Seraphine's eyes narrowed. Sarcasm is not appropriate in the royal palace. "You will address me as Lady Seraphine or simply as my lady. You will stand when I enter a room. You will not speak unless given permission. Do you understand?" Jake stood up slowly. "Look, I didn't ask for any of this. I'm just trying to get through it without causing more problems." "Your very presence is a problem," Lady Seraphine said coldly, a human in the royal palace. "It is unthinkable. But since you are here, I will ensure you do not embarrass the princess more than your selection already has." The words stung, but Jake kept his face neutral. He had dealt with difficult people before. "What do I need to learn?" "Everything," Lady Seraphine replied. "How to speak properly, how to walk, how to eat, how to greet members of different species. Your people have no culture, no refinement. You're like children playing at civilization." Jake felt his temper rise. Humans might be new to space travel, but we have plenty of culture. We have art, music, literature, philosophy. We've survived wars, diseases, and near extinction. We're still here. "Surviving is not the same as thriving," Lady Seraphine said dismissively. "The Valorian Empire has existed for 12,000 years. We have never known defeat. We have never struggled. We simply are superior." Jake opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Getting into a fight with his teacher would not help. "Fine," he said. "Teach me what I need to know." Over the next week, Jake's life became a blur of lessons. Lady Seraphine taught him the complex system of bows, nods, and hand gestures used to greet different species. She drilled him on the proper way to sit, stand, and walk in formal settings. She made him memorize the names and titles of hundreds of important nobles and their family connections. The hardest part was learning to control his face. Humans were naturally expressive, Lady Seraphine explained with disgust. They showed every emotion openly. Valorians considered this crude and childish. A proper noble kept their face calm and revealed nothing. You look like you are in pain, Lady Seraphine said during one lesson. That is not a neutral expression. That is suffering. Maybe because I am suffering, Jake replied. She did not find this funny. On the 8th day, Jake was told he would dine with Princess Liara. Lady Seraphine spent hours preparing him, explaining which utensils to use for which foods and how to hold them correctly. She warned him not to speak unless the princess spoke first. The dining room was smaller than Jake expected, though still large by Earth standards. A long table of dark wood sat in the center. Princess Liara was already seated at one end. She wore simpler robes than at the ceremony, but still looked incredibly formal. Jake walked to the table, remembering to keep his steps even and measured. He bowed exactly as Lady Seraphine had taught him. Princess Liara, thank you for inviting me. Sit, she said, gesturing to the chair at the other end of the table. Jake sat. A servant appeared with the first course, a soup that smelled like flowers and tasted like nothing Jake had ever experienced. He picked up the correct spoon and ate carefully, aware that Liara was watching him. They ate in silence for several minutes. Jake wanted to say something, anything, but remembered his instructions. Finally, Liara spoke. Lady Seraphine tells me you are a difficult student. Jake looked up, surprised. I'm trying my best. She says you question everything and make inappropriate jokes. I guess that's fair, Jake admitted. I'm not used to all these rules. On Earth, people are more casual. Casual, Liara repeated as if the word was foreign. My entire life has been about following rules. I was taught to walk before I could speak. I learned court protocol before I learned to read. Every moment of my day is planned and controlled. There was something in her voice that made Jake look at her more carefully. She still looked composed and perfect, but he thought he detected a hint of sadness. That sounds exhausting, he said quietly. Liara's eyes met his. For a moment her mask slipped and he saw real surprise there. Yes, she said. It is. They ate in silence again, but it felt less awkward now. When the servants brought the next course, Liara asked, What was your life like on Earth? Before all this? Jake relaxed slightly. Pretty normal. I worked as a liaison between Earth's military and our science division. My job was to translate technical information into language that commanders could understand. It was boring most of the time. And your family? My dad fixes machines. My mom teaches children. I have a younger sister named Katie. She's studying art. Jake smiled at the memory. She paints these huge colorful pictures. My parents don't really understand them, but they hang them all over their house anyway. Your sister is allowed to pursue art, even if it has no practical value? Of course, Jake said. People should do what makes them happy as long as they're not hurting anyone. Liara looked puzzled. But what about duty? What about serving the greater good? Those things matter too, Jake said. But happiness also matters. Life is too short to spend it all doing things you hate. Life is duty, Liara said, but she sounded less certain than before. After dinner, Liara asked Jake to walk with her in the palace gardens. The gardens were beautiful, filled with plants from dozens of worlds. Some glowed in the darkness. Others made soft musical sounds when the wind touched them. They walked in silence for a while. Finally, Liara stopped near a fountain. I am afraid, she said suddenly. Jake turned to her in surprise. This was the first real emotion she had shown him. I am afraid of failing my people, she continued. I have trained my entire life to be empress. Every decision I make affects billions of lives. And now the crystal has chosen you, a human I do not know from a species my people do not respect. What if it made a mistake? What if I cannot be the empress my empire needs? Jake did not know what to say. He stood there looking at this powerful princess who suddenly seemed very young and very lost. I'm afraid too, he finally admitted. I never wanted this. I'm just a regular guy who got incredibly unlucky. I don't know your customs. I don't understand your politics, and I'm definitely not good enough for someone like you. But I'm here and I'll do my best not to let you down. Liara really looked at him for the first time. You are very honest. Most people tell me only what they think I want to hear. I don't know you well enough to lie convincingly, Jake said with a slight smile. To his surprise, Liara's lips curved upward just a little. It was not quite a smile, but it was close. "Tell me about Earth," she said. "I want to understand where you come from." So Jake told her. He talked about blue skies and oceans, about cities that reached toward the clouds and wild places where humans had never built anything. He told her about music and movies, about sports and holidays. He talked about humanity's struggles, the wars and mistakes, but also the art and love and stubborn hope that kept people going. Liara listened carefully to everything. She asked questions about things that confused her. Why did humans keep pets? Why did they celebrate getting older? Why did they cry at weddings? Because we feel things strongly, Jake explained. Maybe too strongly sometimes. We get excited and sad and angry and hopeful. We can't help it. Valorians are taught to control such feelings, Liara said. Emotion clouds judgment. Maybe, Jake said. But emotion also drives us. It makes us care about things beyond logic and duty. It makes life worth living. They talked until the 3 moons set and the first sun began to rise. When they finally walked back to the palace, something had shifted between them. They were not friends, not yet, but they were no longer complete strangers either. High up in a palace tower, Chancellor Dravos watched them through a window. His red face twisted with anger. A human speaking with the princess as an equal. It was disgusting. It was wrong. He turned to his advisor, a thin alien with too many arms. "Prepare the trials," Dravos said. "Make sure they are as difficult as possible. I want that human to fail. I want him humiliated, and I want him gone from this palace forever." The arena was packed with thousands of spectators. Jake stood in a small room beneath the main floor, trying to calm his racing heart. Through the walls, he could hear the crowd murmuring. They were waiting for him to fail. Lady Seraphine stood near the door, her face disapproving as always. "The first trial begins in 10 minutes. The test of wisdom. You will enter the arena and face a diplomatic simulation. You must solve a crisis between multiple species. The scenario changes every time, so I cannot prepare you for the specifics." "What if I make the wrong choice?" Jake asked. "Then you fail and you return to Earth in disgrace," she said simply. "Try not to embarrass us more than you already have." A chime sounded. The door slid open. Jake walked into the brightness of the arena. The crowd's noise hit him like a physical force. Thousands of aliens stared down at him from the seats above. Some shouted insults. Others simply watched with cold curiosity. Jake spotted Princess Liara in the royal box sitting next to her father. Her face showed nothing. In the center of the arena stood a large holographic display. As Jake approached, it flickered to life. Images appeared, showing 4 different alien species. A voice boomed across the arena. "The scenario is as follows. 4 species share a mining asteroid. A valuable resource has been discovered deep within the asteroid. Each species claims ownership. The Thorians claim it by right of first discovery. The Zentari claim it because they provide security for the asteroid. The Molochs claim it because their technology found it. The Vexians claim it because their workers do most of the mining. Tensions are rising. Violence is likely. You have 10 minutes to propose a solution that all 4 will accept." Jake stared at the holographic images. The 4 species could not have been more different from each other. The Thorians were large and covered in thick armor. The Zentari looked like walking plants. The Molochs were small and moved on 6 legs. The Vexians had wings and flew rather than walked. The crowd began counting down. 10 minutes. 9 minutes 50 seconds. Jake forced himself to focus. Lady Seraphine had taught him about galactic politics. The standard approach would be to divide the resource equally or create some kind of shared ownership. But looking at the 4 species, Jake could see that would not work. They were too different, with different needs and values. He thought about his time working with Earth's military and scientists. Sometimes the best solutions came from changing the question entirely. "I need more information," Jake called out. "Can I ask questions about the scenario?" The voice responded. "You may ask 3 questions. What type of resource was discovered?" "Crystallized viridium, highly valuable for energy production." "What are the 4 species' greatest needs right now?" "The Thorians need food sources. The Zentari need medical supplies. The Molochs need protection from solar radiation. The Vexians need better communication systems." Jake's mind raced. "Final question. Is the viridium the only valuable resource in the asteroid?" "No. The asteroid contains many resources, but viridium is the most valuable." The crowd was still counting. 5 minutes left. Jake took a deep breath. "My proposal is this. The viridium will be extracted and sold. The profits will be used to address each species' actual needs, rather than being divided equally. The Thorians will receive agricultural technology and food shipments. The Zentari will receive advanced medical facilities. The Molochs will receive radiation shielding. The Vexians will receive communications equipment. A neutral party will manage the extraction and distribution to ensure fairness. The crowd went quiet. The voice asked, "Why would any species accept receiving different things rather than an equal share of the viridium?" "Because what they actually need is not money or resources," Jake explained. "They need solutions to their problems. This way, everyone gets what they truly require. The value they receive is equal even if the form is different. Plus, by working together on this project, they build relationships that will help them cooperate in the future." The holographic display showed the 4 species considering the proposal. After a long moment, all 4 indicated acceptance. The voice boomed, "The first trial is complete. Jake Morrison has passed." The crowd erupted. Some cheered, but many booed. Jake saw Chancellor Dravos in the royal box, his red face dark with fury. Princess Liara's expression remained neutral, but Jake thought he saw the smallest nod of approval. Lady Seraphine met him as he left the arena. "You were lucky," she said. "The second trial will not be so easy." She was right. 3 days later, Jake stood in the combat arena. This time he wore light armor and carried no weapons. Across from him stood a Kragor warrior, a species known throughout the galaxy for their fighting abilities. The Kragor was massive, easily 3 times Jake's size. His body was covered in thick scales that looked like natural armor. His forearms each ended in claws that could tear through metal. When he roared, Jake felt it in his bones. "This is the trial of strength," the voice announced. "Defeat your opponent or yield. Those are your only options." The crowd was cheering now, excited for violence. Jake heard someone shout, "Crush the human!" The Kragor charged. Jake barely rolled out of the way in time. The Kragor's claws slammed into the ground where Jake had been standing, leaving deep gouges in the stone. Jake scrambled to his feet and backed away. He could not win with strength. The Kragor was too big, too strong, too well armored. Jake needed to think. The Kragor charged again. This time Jake ran toward him instead of away. At the last second, he dropped and slid between the Kragor's legs. He kicked upward as hard as he could, hitting the back of the Kragor's knee. The Kragor stumbled but did not fall. He spun around faster than Jake expected and swung with all 4 arms. Jake ducked under 2 arms, blocked a third with his forearm, and took the 4th strike on his shoulder. Pain exploded through him, but he kept moving. For 5 minutes, Jake dodged, blocked, and occasionally struck back. He was getting tired. His shoulder throbbed where the Kragor had hit him. He could not keep this up much longer. Then Jake noticed something. The Kragor always attacked in the same pattern: high, low, middle, middle. And after each combination, he paused for just a second to reset. Jake waited for the next combination: high, low, middle, middle. During the pause, Jake feinted left. The Kragor moved to block. Jake immediately reversed direction and swept the Kragor's front leg while shoving his chest. The Kragor fell. Before he could get up, Jake jumped onto his back and wrapped his arms around the Kragor's thick neck. It was not a chokehold exactly. Jake did not have the strength for that, but he held on tight and positioned himself so the Kragor could not reach him with any of his 4 arms. "Yield," Jake said, breathing hard. The Kragor roared and tried to throw him off. Jake held on. "Yield," Jake repeated. "You can't reach me and I'm not letting go. We can stay like this all day if you want." The Kragor tried for another minute to dislodge Jake. Finally, he went still. "I yield," he growled. Jake let go and rolled away, ready to dodge if the Kragor attacked again. But the warrior simply stood and bowed slightly. "You fight with cleverness, not strength," the Kragor said. "This is acceptable." The crowd was mixed in their reaction. Some cheered for the unexpected victory. Others complained that Jake had won through tricks rather than proper combat. Chancellor Dravos looked like he wanted to throw something, but Emperor Vorath stood up in the royal box. "The second trial is complete. Jake Morrison has passed." Jake limped out of the arena, his shoulder screaming in pain. Lady Seraphine was waiting with medical personnel. As they worked on his injuries, she said grudgingly, "That was not terrible, but the 3rd trial will be far worse." That night, Jake was summoned to a private meeting with the Emperor. He entered the throne room nervously, his shoulder wrapped in healing bandages. Emperor Vorath sat on his throne, looking tired. Princess Liara stood beside him. Chancellor Dravos was also present, along with several other nobles. "Jake Morrison," the Emperor said, "you have passed 2 trials. The third and final trial is the test of sacrifice. Traditionally, the candidate must journey into the dying wastes alone to retrieve the tears of eternity, sacred crystals that form during energy storms. This is the most dangerous trial." "I understand," Jake said, though his stomach clenched with fear. Chancellor Dravos stepped forward. "However, given the unusual circumstances of your selection, we have decided to make the trial more challenging. You will have no guide, no map, and limited supplies. You will navigate by the stars alone. If you cannot complete the trial within 7 days, you will be considered to have failed." Jake saw Princess Liara's eyes widen slightly. Even for her, this seemed too harsh. But she said nothing. "Do you accept these terms?" the Emperor asked. Jake met Liara's gaze. She gave the smallest shake of her head, so tiny that only he could see it. She was telling him it was too dangerous, that he should refuse. But Jake thought about Earth, about the political consequences of failure. He thought about his conversations with Liara in the gardens, about the connection they had started to build. "I accept," he said. Chancellor Dravos smiled coldly. "Excellent. You depart at dawn." As Jake left the throne room, he felt a hand on his arm. Princess Liara had followed him into the corridor. "You should have refused," she said quietly. "The dying wastes are incredibly dangerous even with proper equipment. Dravos has made the transport dropped Jake at the edge of the dying waste just after dawn. The pilot, a quiet Valorian with gray skin, handed him a pack of supplies and pointed toward the horizon. "The tears of eternity form in the heart of the wasteland," the pilot said. "Follow the stars at night. Energy storms appear as green lights in the sky. That is where you will find the crystals. May fortune favor you." The transport lifted off, leaving Jake alone. He stood for a moment, looking at the landscape before him. The dying waste stretched endlessly in all directions. The ground was covered in reddish dust that swirled in the constant wind. Jagged rocks jutted up like broken teeth. The sky was a sickly yellow color and the air smelled of sulfur. Jake checked his supplies. A protective suit that would shield him from the worst of the environment. A small water recycler, high-energy food bars, a basic medical kit, a navigation device that would show him the position of stars at night, and most importantly, a breathing mask, because the air in the dying wastes was toxic to humans. He put on the mask and started walking. The first day was not too bad. The suit kept him cool despite the heat, and the mask made breathing easy. He walked steadily, trying to conserve energy. When night fell, he used the navigation device to check the stars and adjust his course. On the second day, things got worse. Jake's navigation device began giving strange readings. The stars it showed did not match what he saw in the sky. He tried to reset it, but the problem continued. By midday, the device went completely dark and would not turn on again. Jake stared at the dead device in his hand. Without it, he could not navigate accurately. He would have to rely on his memory of the star positions Lady Seraphine had made him memorize. He kept walking, but doubt crept into his mind. Was he going in the right direction? Had he already gotten lost? On the third day, his protective suit began to fail. Small tears appeared in the fabric. The suit's cooling system started to malfunction, making him alternate between too hot and too cold. Jake used tape from his medical kit to patch the tears, but new ones kept appearing. By evening, his suit was covered in patches and barely functioning. That night, exhausted and overheated, Jake lay on the hard ground and stared at the alien stars. He thought about his family back on Earth. His dad would be working in his garage covered in grease and humming old songs. His mom would be grading papers at the kitchen table. His sister Katie would be painting in her tiny apartment, probably getting more paint on herself than on the canvas. They had no idea where he was or what was happening to him. For all they knew, he was attending boring diplomatic meetings. Jake missed them so much it hurt. On the fourth day, he saw the green lights. They danced on the horizon, flickering and pulsing. Energy storms. Jake changed direction and headed toward them. His water was running low. His food was almost gone. His suit was more patches than original fabric. But he was close now. He had to be. The storm was magnificent and terrifying. Green lightning arced across the sky. The ground shook with thunder. Wind howled so loudly Jake could barely hear himself think. He pulled his suit tighter and pushed forward into the chaos. In the heart of the storm, Jake found what he was looking for. A cluster of crystals jutted from the ground, glowing with internal light. The tears of eternity. They were beautiful, like frozen pieces of the aurora borealis. Jake approached carefully. The air around the crystals crackled with energy. When he touched the first crystal, electricity shot up his arm. He gritted his teeth and pulled. The crystal came free with a sound like breaking glass. He grabbed 2 more crystals, wrapping them in cloth from his medical kit. The energy made his hands tingle and burn, but he held on. Now he just had to get back alive. Jake had been walking for 3 hours when he saw them. 5 figures appeared in the dust ahead of him. They wore combat armor and carried weapons. As they got closer, Jake could see they were mercenaries from different species. "That's far enough, human," one of them called out. He was a Zentari, the plant-like species Jake remembered from the first trial. "Give us the crystals and we'll let you live." Jake's hand moved to his belt where he had a small emergency beacon. If he activated it, help might come, but it would also mean he had failed the trial by asking for assistance. "I don't think so," Jake said, trying to sound braver than he felt. The mercenaries laughed. 5 against 1, human. You barely survived a fair fight in the arena. This won't be fair, they were right. Jake was exhausted, injured, and outnumbered. But he had not come this far to give up now. The first mercenary charged. Jake dodged and kicked his legs out from under him. The second came from the left. Jake blocked and struck at his throat. But the third caught Jake from behind, wrapping strong arms around him. Jake struggled, but the mercenary was too strong. The others moved in, weapons ready. Suddenly, a blast of energy hit the mercenary holding Jake. The arms released him and Jake dropped to the ground. More energy blasts filled the air. The mercenaries scattered, looking for the source of the attack. Through the dust, Jake saw a vehicle approaching. It stopped nearby and Princess Liara jumped out, followed by 4 royal guards. She carried an energy weapon and her eyes blazed with anger. "Stand down," she commanded the mercenaries, "or I will consider this an act of war against the royal family." The mercenaries looked at each other, then fled into the wastes. Liara rushed to Jake and knelt beside him. "Are you injured? Can you walk?" "I'm okay," Jake said, though his body disagreed. "What are you doing here?" "Saving you," she said. Her calm mask was gone, replaced by genuine concern. "I discovered evidence of sabotage. Your equipment was tampered with. Those mercenaries were hired to ensure you never returned." "Who hired them?" "I have my suspicions. But right now we need to get you to safety." Jake pulled away from her helping hands. "No, if you help me complete the trial, it will be invalid. I'll fail." "Better to fail than to die," Liara said firmly. "But the political consequences—" "Let me worry about politics," she interrupted. "You are injured, your equipment is destroyed, and you were attacked by hired killers. No reasonable person would expect you to continue alone." Jake looked at the crystals in his pack, then at Liara's worried face. "I'll fail," he said again. "Perhaps," Liara said. "Or perhaps some things are more important than tradition." One of the guards spoke up. "Princess, we should leave. More mercenaries may come." Liara stood and held out her hand to Jake. He stared at it for a long moment. If he took it, he would probably fail the trial. Earth's reputation would suffer. He would return home in disgrace, but he would be alive. Jake took her hand. The journey back to the palace took 2 days. Jake spent most of it recovering in the vehicle's medical bay. His injuries were treated, his dehydration corrected, but his mind kept circling back to the same thought. He had failed. When they arrived at the palace, he was immediately summoned to the throne room. Emperor Vorath sat on his throne, looking grave. Chancellor Dravos stood nearby, barely hiding his satisfaction. The High Council had assembled to pass judgment. "Jake Morrison," the Emperor began, "you have failed the 3rd trial. Princess Liara's interference, while well-intentioned, has invalidated your completion of the test." "I understand," Jake said quietly. "However," the Emperor continued, "new information has come to light. Princess Liara, please present your evidence." Liara stepped forward. She activated a holographic display showing communications logs, payment records, and recorded conversations. Chancellor Dravos sabotaged Jake's equipment before the trial. He hired mercenaries to attack Jake in the wasteland. He violated the sacred nature of the trials by actively working to ensure a candidate's failure, rather than simply testing their worth. The throne room erupted in shocked murmurs. Dravos's red face went pale. "These are lies," he shouted. "Fabrications created by a princess blinded by inappropriate feelings for a human." "They are facts," Liara said coldly. "Verified by the Royal Intelligence Service. You have committed treason against the throne and violated our most ancient traditions." Guards moved toward Dravos. He backed away, his eyes wild. "I did it for the Empire. To save us from the shame of a human in the royal family. You all know I'm right. Humans are inferior. They don't belong among us. That is for the crystal to decide, not for you," Emperor Vorath said. His voice was like thunder. "Take him away." The guard seized Dravos and dragged him from the throne room, still shouting protests. The Emperor turned back to Jake. "The question now is what to do about the trial. Technically, you failed by accepting help. However, the trial itself was corrupted by sabotage. The High Council must decide." An elderly Valorian with white skin stood. "I propose we allow Jake Morrison to retake the third trial under proper conditions." Another council member shook her head. "That sets a dangerous precedent. The trials have always been completed in a single attempt." They argued back and forth. Jake stood silently, waiting for his fate to be decided by others. The High Council argued for hours. Some demanded Jake be given another chance. Others insisted that tradition was absolute and he had failed regardless of the circumstances. The throne room echoed with raised voices in a dozen different languages. Jake watched them debate his future. He felt strangely calm. After everything he had been through, he was too tired to be anxious anymore. Finally, Emperor Vorath raised his hand for silence. "I will hear from Jake Morrison himself." Human approached the throne. Jake walked forward and bowed. His body still ached from the wasteland, but he stood straight. "You have been quiet during these deliberations," the Emperor said. "Do you have nothing to say in your own defense?" "I failed the trial," Jake said simply. "The rules were clear. Princess Liara helped me, so the trial is invalid. I understand that." "And yet you claim the trial was unfair," a council member said. "It was unfair," Jake agreed. "My equipment was sabotaged. I was attacked by hired killers. But life isn't fair. Challenges don't come with perfect conditions. I dealt with the sabotage. I survived the attacks. I retrieved the crystals. The only thing I couldn't do alone was get back safely while being hunted by mercenaries." He paused, then continued. "But here's what I've learned during my time here. I've learned about your history, your culture, your values. I've learned that Valorians prize honor, tradition, and strength. Those are good things. But I've also seen how those values can become rigid, how they can prevent you from adapting to new situations." The council members stirred, some looking offended. Jake pushed on. "The crystal chose me. I don't know why. Maybe it made a mistake. Maybe it saw something I don't see. But I think maybe it chose me because your empire needs something different. Not better, just different. A new perspective. A willingness to question the old ways when they don't work anymore." Chancellor Vex, an elderly Valorian who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "You dare suggest our ways don't work?" "I suggest that nothing works forever without change," Jake said. "Humans have only been in space for 15 years. We make mistakes constantly, but we also adapt quickly. We try new things. We don't do things just because that's how they've always been done." He turned to address the entire council. "You're right that I failed the trial by your rules. I accept that. But I also completed the impossible task you gave me despite sabotage, equipment failure, and armed attackers. I survived because I adapted. I improvised. I refused to give up even when every logical reason said I should." Jake looked at Emperor Vorath. "So here's what I propose. I'll leave Valoria. The bonding will be annulled. But first let it be Princess Liara's choice, not the crystals or traditions. Ask her if she wants this bonding. Give her the freedom to choose her own path." The throne room went completely silent. No one had expected this. Princess Liara stood frozen. Her silver eyes were wide with shock. "What are you doing?" she whispered. Jake turned to face her. "Giving you what you never had. A choice." Emperor Vorath leaned forward on his throne. "Daughter, you have heard Jake Morrison's proposal. The decision is yours. Do you wish to continue with this bonding, or shall we annul it?" Every eye in the throne room turned to Liara. She looked at her father, then at the council members, then finally at Jake. For the first time since Jake had met her, her mask completely fell away. He saw fear there and confusion, but also something else. Determination. "I choose to continue the bonding. she said clearly. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Emperor Vorath's expression remained neutral, but Jake thought he saw approval in the Emperor's eyes. "Explain your reasoning," Vorath said. Liara walked to the center of the throne room. "I have spent my entire life following rules, doing what was expected, becoming what others needed me to be. The crystal chose Jake, and I accepted that because it was tradition. But now I understand what the crystal saw." She turned to address the council. "Our empire has existed for 12,000 years. We are powerful and respected. But we have also become stagnant. We resist change. We look down on younger species. We believe our way is the only way." "This is heresy," one council member muttered. "This is truth," Liara said firmly. Jake Morrison survived impossible odds through adaptability and creative thinking. He solved the diplomatic crisis by looking beyond traditional solutions. He defeated a superior opponent through intelligence rather than strength. He continued forward despite sabotage and attacks. These are not weaknesses. These are exactly what our empire needs. She walked to Jake and stood beside him. More than that, Jake showed me something I had never experienced before. He treated me as a person, not just a princess. He shared his fears with me. He gave me a choice when no one else ever has. The crystal chose him not despite being human, but because of it." "Beautiful words," Chancellor Vex said dryly. "But the fact remains that he failed the trial." "Did he?" Emperor Vorath said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. The trial of sacrifice tests a candidate's willingness to endure hardship for the good of the empire. Jake Morrison entered the dying wastes with sabotaged equipment. He survived equipment failure, hostile environment, and armed attack. He retrieved the sacred crystals. He succeeded in every way that matters. But he accepted help. Another council member protested. He accepted help after completing the impossible task given to him. The Emperor corrected. The trial's purpose is to test character and resolve, not to cause unnecessary death. Jake Morrison has proven his character through actions far more demanding than any fair trial would have required. The Emperor stood from his throne. Furthermore, my daughter risked her position and reputation to save him. She demonstrated the courage to challenge tradition when tradition had been corrupted. That too is a sign of what our empire needs. He raised his voice to address the entire assembly. "I declare that Jake Morrison has passed all 3 trials. Moreover, I declare that the events of these trials have revealed truths about our empire that we must face. We have become too rigid in our thinking, too convinced of our superiority, too resistant to growth." Emperor Vorath walked down the steps from his throne and stood before Jake and Liara. "The crystal chose a human for a reason. Not to shame us, but to challenge us. To remind us that wisdom can come from unexpected places, that strength takes many forms. That honor means admitting when we are wrong and having the courage to change." He placed one hand on Jake's shoulder and one on Liara's. "I approve this bonding, not because tradition demands it, but because I believe it will make both of you stronger, and perhaps it will help make our empire stronger as well." The throne room erupted in noise. Some council members applauded. Others protested loudly. Arguments broke out across the chamber, but Emperor Vorath silenced them all with a gesture. "The bonding ceremony will take place tomorrow at sunset. The council is dismissed." As the council members filed out, still arguing among themselves, Jake found himself alone with Liara and her father. "Thank you," Jake said to the Emperor. "I know that wasn't an easy decision." "Easy decisions rarely matter," Vorath replied. He studied Jake carefully. "Do not make me regret this, human. My daughter's happiness is worth more to me than any tradition. If you fail her, there will be nowhere in this galaxy you can hide from me." "Understood," Jake said. The Emperor nodded and left, leaving Jake and Liara alone in the massive throne room. "You could have fought harder for yourself," Liara said. "You could have demanded another trial." "I was tired of fighting," Jake admitted. "And I meant what I said. You deserved a choice." "And if I had chosen to annul the bonding?" Jake smiled sadly. "Then I would have gone home disappointed, but knowing I did the right thing." Liara stepped closer to him. "Jake Morrison, you are the most frustrating, stubborn, confusing person I have ever met. Is that a compliment or an insult?" "I'm not entirely sure," she said, and for the first time Jake heard genuine amusement in her voice. The bonding ceremony the next evening was different from what anyone expected. Emperor Vorath had made changes to the traditional ritual. incorporating elements from both Valorian and human customs. Jake wore formal Earth clothes rather than Valorian robes. Liara wore a dress that combined traditional royal purple with touches of blue, reminiscent of Earth's sky. Representatives from dozens of species attended, including a delegation from Earth that had arrived just in time. Lisa Hayes, Jake's former commander, approached him before the ceremony. "I heard what happened, all of it. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Probably both," Jake said. "Earth is proud of you," Lisa said seriously, "and more importantly, you've changed how the galaxy sees humanity. We're not just the new kids anymore. We're partners." The ceremony itself was surprisingly simple. Jake and Liara stood before Emperor Vorath and spoke vows of partnership. Not of obedience or duty, but of mutual respect and shared purpose. They promised to learn from each other, to support each other, and to face the future together. When the ceremony ended, the celebration began. It lasted through the night with music and food from 100 worlds. Jake spent most of it talking with various aliens, answering questions about Earth and humanity. Many were genuinely curious now, seeing humans as interesting rather than inferior. Late in the night, Jake and Liara escaped to a quiet balcony overlooking the city. 3 moons hung in the sky, and in the distance they could see